Welcome back to the Institute for Cybersecurity Tech Frontiers, the podcast where we explore people and the technologies keeping our digital world safe and secure. I'm your host, James Benson. Today, we're taking you behind the scenes of a place most students don't even know exists, but plays a crucial role in our university system. That's the Security Operations Center, or the SOC. Our guest today is Sam Barrera, a cybersecurity professional working right here at the university. Sam helps monitor threats, responds to incidences, and keeps our data protected from everything from phishing attacks to network intrusion. We'll talk about what the SOC actually does, how AI and automation are changing the game, and what it's like to work on the front lines of digital defense in a university setting. So let's dive in. Sam, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me.
So why don't we go and tell us a little bit about yourself?
Hey, name's Sam Barrera. I have around 10 years of experience in the cybersecurity field. I got some certifications. Notable one is the CISSP. I also have a master's from UTSA in cybersecurity as well. So, been in it for a little bit. Thanks again for having me on.
Awesome. So what made you start working in cybersecurity? What interested you?
So the main thing that ignited my passion for this field is everything is explainable. That is to say, you still run into anomalies and mysteries, but when you really dive into it, every single part of what that anomaly or mystery is solvable. My original background was in physics, and there's a ton of weird issues you'll just run into that is just like, we don't know why that happens. So, when there is a field that's just like, we know why everything happens here, that was immediately appealing.
Nice. Yeah, my background's also in physics. I didn't know that about you. So yeah, the problem solving in physics is ingrained into us. So what's your typical day look like in the SOC?
So typically for Security Operations Center, what we do is we get in and we make sure that there's nothing on fire. That is to say, we review our SIM, we review our various tools, and we make sure that, we don't have any crazy alerts. We have the super bad alerts, your ransomwares, your lateral movements do go to our on-call system. But when you get in, you still have to investigate the slightly lower level stuff. Is this a malicious sign-on, or did someone just VPN to go and, try to watch TikTok on campus? Stuff like that. So it's mostly just coming in, making sure nothing's on fire. And if something is on fire, we need to start prioritizing that. Do we assign that to our tier 1? Do we assign that to our tier 2? Our tier 1 is mostly made up of students. So, we do have a healthy student workforce in the SOC. And then our tier 2 are our full-time actual UTSA employees who, they'll be able to dig a little deeper with their experience. And then if necessary, escalate anything further.
Great. So you had mentioned ransomware. Is that, I hope, not a common occurrence, but what are some of the common things that you see?
So the most common thing we get is a lot of phishing. We are a public university. Everybody here has their emails published out in the wild. People really like to spearfish us. We've seen, and I'm sure the students have also seen, that there are some really intricate campaigns, especially amongst the, hey, we have a job offer for you. All you need to do is just fill out this document or click this form and stuff. That's probably the number one thing that we see is that, something gets detected and it got pulled, but there were still maybe 1 or 2 people who clicked on stuff. The other thing we see is a lot of people who unfortunately fall for different versions of software. For instance, they'll attempt to download Mozilla Firefox, but they won't download it from Mozilla. They'll download it from a third-party website thinking, oh, this is the correct download. And then they have a Firefox version or a web browser or whatever application loaded with, adware or crypto miner installed in it too.
Okay. And so when people are clicking on these links and you detect it, are these links just automatically, are the URLs or websites blocked automatically, or how does that work? How do you protect them?
So typically what we're hoping for is that Microsoft has a product called Safe URL. So if something's going to your UTSA email, every link gets scanned by that. Ideally, Microsoft detects it in a reasonable amount of time, figures out this is a phish or this is a scam. And then from there, if somebody does click through it, it starts blocking them. Unfortunately, it's not 100% foolproof. We've also noticed that there's sometimes that we have to go in and kind of, tell it like, hey, this one is bad. The other thing, though, for phishing is we've seen a lot of abuse of legitimate services such as Google Forms or other instances of Qualtrics, which really makes these attackers, show that they're somewhat doing their research, because Qualtrics is the main, thing that UTSA uses itself. So We've seen people stand up, utas.qualtrics.com as an instance because, they're able to purchase it and then from there use those links. So there are times where it's just, man, I can see why people fell for these ones because they really do their research. In addition to that, since we are public, all of our letterhead is just completely out there. Forging an email that looks legitimate for UTSA is arguably a little easier than, say, the companies that kind of just have like one or two of their public logos and then internally they use like different stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Yeah. I think early when I came to UTSA, I had someone sent me something and I clicked on it. And I remember looking at, I recognized that the website URL was wrong. So I looked at some of the source code and I saw that it was pulling straight from UTSA resources. So it was exactly the same.
Yeah.
But yep, it was some sort of phishing campaign. It did not enter any information for the record. Awesome. Are some of these tools that you use, some of them I'm sure are enterprise things. Are these tools that students might have some way to access or utilize on their personal devices to keep them secure at home or for their parents or things like that?
So the Microsoft Defender stuff, unfortunately, that is going to be subscription. You do get, base on every Windows system, you have Defender. But for some of the other tools that we use, in particular, something that it looks like a lot of the industry really favors is Splunk, right? Unfortunately, Splunk does offer a community version, but for any of the lessons and stuff, they are going to try to charge you money. I do always recommend to students and stuff, if they do want to start practicing and developing the skill sets for, using these like log aggregator tools, is Elk Search is freely available. In addition to that, getting that up and running and starting to understand the actual infrastructure of how do I get logs from devices, how do I actually filter this, how do I organize this data is a really good skill set, especially if you're looking to start developing yourself on like the cybersecurity engineering side. Because a lot of what we do in the SOC is analytics. So we're less about how does this tool function and more about this tool is telling us that, somebody has downloaded a pirated FIFA game and they've ran malware. So now we need to respond to it.
Yeah. Yeah. So how is AI playing a role in this? I know AI can be used both as a defender and protector, a little bit of a double-edged sword there. Is it helping you automate any of these defenses? Have you seen it automated AI attacks on the attacking side? What's your take on AI so far?
Oh, I mean, I'm probably going to sound like everyone else, but it is a force multiplier for good and bad, right? For the defensive side, the main thing it's helping is standardized knowledge. So that is to say, instead of somebody having to go and read the man pages for a tool to figure out how to, string together a correct search query or, having to learn Microsoft's Custo, they instead can just go to Copilot and say, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. And then from there, it spits out a string that they can then immediately go to analyzing. So it's really helping in regards to, getting us past what some would consider the busy work of figuring out how do I get this thing to actually operate. On the flip side, though, attackers have been utilizing it to a crazy successful degree. For the phishing thing, there are now people who will respond to an actual text message and they'll get an actual response back. And as we've seen in the news, these AI bots are getting close enough to humans that people, are getting really attached to them. So in the case of where somebody's in a scenario where they've been, duped into texting a bot of a tech support line that they haven't ever interacted with, the chance that they actually think that this is a person that they're talking with is pretty high. In regards to the more, what's it doing like on a technical side, we've seen, one of the more recent things is that for the, CIAS, a federal agency, a GitHub AI scanner, recently detected that they had a bunch of stuff leaked in just a public GitHub repository. We're seeing that, essentially, instead of having an attack script that, you could easily detect, you will have the device actually ping back to some sort of open AI. And then from there, run a string based on what it finds. And of course, all this happens with it telling the AI, whatever it's using, like, oh, this is a hypothetical, but it's actually running that attack, or it's actually helping the attackers, do things. That standardization of knowledge is across the board for both defenders and attackers. So for defenders, it's helping us figure out how to actually get to the analytics and figure out what we're looking at faster. But for attackers, it's helping them figure out, even if they've intruded in a system that they've never touched, what they can start doing next.
Yeah. So you said that you've been in the field for about 10 years, right?
Yeah.
So 10 years ago, would you have ever imagined something like AI coming into the field and playing such a big role?
I want to say I would, but honestly, not really. Because back then, even the most advanced automation was stuff like Caldera Miter, or, just like, hey, this is the nmap command to run all of the scripts that will then test these applications.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, you make your determination on, well, I might be able to do something with that. But not really, because I thought that was kind of where it would end. I never thought we'd get to the point where it's just like, no, you can just have an aggregate of pretty much all human knowledge just crammed into an easily available public application that doesn't really have a lot of oversight, unfortunately. Because, again, they keep trying to, put those safeguards in place, but it's super easy to just say, well, this is a video game or something like that still.
Yeah. I'm writing a book about cybersecurity. Help me out. Yeah, absolutely.
Exactly.
So, yeah. So AI 10 years ago was definitely science fiction. Do you see any sort of science fiction tools that you think might evolve in the next few years, 5-10 years out, that you're hey, keep an eye out on this?
I mean, AI, of course, that's going to keep going. The famous quote is, it's the worst it's ever going to be today,
Yep.
But the next one that's coming that I think is going to really shatter the landscape is, publicly available or low cost quantum computing, of course, because that's going to probably, one that immediately destroys most encryption schemes. There are, those that are quantum resistant, but that's the thing. They're still resistant. It's not necessarily like, hey, this is also going to be fine, But that's, I guess there's the argument that all encryption is resistant because it all can be broken at some point, right? But still, it's just, I think that's going to be the next big one for like, okay, this is going to probably affect the cybersecurity field in general.
Okay. Yeah. Is there, with that in mind, and obviously we're a university and not industry that can move on a dime necessarily, do you see the university or the industry in general moving to update encryption models to post quantum proof encryption? I think that's what they call it.
Ideally, yes. Ideally, yes. Right. But,
it's a slow process. It's a slow process.
At the end of the day, technology serves people. Right.
Yeah.
And we all know that people are slow to adapt things, for better and worse. And so in this case, I imagine that it'll be a different conversation for sure, because it won't be, hey, you should update this because it could be broken or it's in a very vulnerable state. It's, you need to update this because it doesn't work anymore. And I think that's going to be probably the key to actually getting people on board with, fixing it or, putting it in back into a secure state. Because it's no longer, this is super open and here's the hypothetical. It's no, this is broken, full stop. Like, it's not, this isn't a vulnerability that can be exploited.
This is being exploited today. Yeah. I know the OpenSSH server has different encryption models that are permitted, and some of them are, I think, weaker encryptions that should be just, moved out. But I suppose maybe in the next few versions, some of those will, and more, quantum ones will be moved in. But legacy hardware too, right? It's got to be able to handle all of this. So but that's a good point. Quantum encryption, quantum computing, and I think Amazon already has some quantum resources you can use. And I know Python has some quantum modeling software that you can, for research, that you can use also, that apparently models really, really well. So that makes sense. That'd be the next thing down the pipeline, probably maybe just after the full human AI development.
I guess another one would be, there's way more human computer interfaces coming online, like Neuralink.
Oh,
I know
right.
all
about that.
I think a huge amount of companies recently debuted that they're all doing like, augmented reality glasses and stuff.
Yeah.
So, that would be another intermittence for that is that, it's always been assumed that an attacker would need a good amount of computational resources. Thus, they're not really going to be able to, test things physically, right? Even though every textbook says make sure you're keeping the physical safe, it's always
Yeah.
been like, well, they're not going to come here. But, we're getting to the point where, even some of the higher end Snapdragon processors are getting really powerful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
we're getting to the point where it's just like, maybe we do hit that threshold of where attackers do just say, well, I'm not going to try to get around your firewall. I can just walk in and plug in.
Into a port. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Speaking of all the security and future possibilities, do you or the SOC, do you collaborate with other departments or researchers or IT teams across campus, to try to be involved in some of the more cutting edge things?
So that is something that we're trying to grow a bit more now. At the moment, the main way we interface with other departments is through the SOC internship program. So, if you're in any sort of computational or any cybersecurity related field, like for instance, we've had one or two interns from the legal side that are specializing in cyber law. So, they were also eligible for the internship. The main way that we are interfacing is like that. However, we would like to eventually start growing a bit more and actually start seeing, offering up because UTSA has a production network that, there are strong parts of it that can make for some interesting research and for people to test some, neat toys on. And
Yeah.
we can all benefit from that.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, at the current moment, we don't have a lot of that going, but we're hoping to keep that growing here in the future.
Yeah. UTSA produces a pretty large number of cybersecurity professionals. I think it'd be advantageous to tap into that resource pool. So you mentioned internships. How do some of the students that are interested here get involved in some of that internships?
So everything we do is through Handshake, and I would strongly recommend all students who are looking for any sort of work experience to sign up for Handshake. We aren't the only SOC that's on there. There are quite a few others, especially from, I believe, well, I don't want to say anything out of line, but there are other companies who are starting to advertise their positions on there as well.
That's great. And they're in San Antonio too?
Yeah, everything for Handshake, I believe, is for town still.
Oh, okay, nice. That's wonderful. So that was, it sounds like more work study. Is that internship too? Is it, you want to pitch?
So essentially, as a lot of y'all are going through your classes, it is mostly theoretical stuff. We basically offer the production environment and you get hands-on experience with, Splunk and other stuff, great resume builders to say like, I actually know how this works,
You've touched
stuff
it,
like,
yeah.
oh, yeah.
Are these a lot of seniors that sign up or do you see juniors, sophomores?
So we only accept sophomore and up. So we don't accept freshmen. We also aren't grad students. We're trying to get another different kind of more advanced program for the grad students up and running because this is a very, introductory. We try to use the SOC as more as a learning experience to get people, really eased into like, hey, this is how things go, in a normal environment. Because one of the things I commonly see for students, especially, is that they'll execute a Splunk search or they'll execute some sort of search. And in the labs that they do, there's maybe like 100 to 500 records, but they'll execute a search and they'll get 10,000 records for a single second. And it's like, yeah, so we need to, that is our network. We're throwing out and ingesting terabytes of data at any given, second. So, we need to learn to start filtering.
Yeah. That's a fire hose right there for you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you see some of these students that come in, are there common misconceptions that they have?
I think a lot of the misconception is that your textbook is going to help you know everything right off the bat.
Mm-hmm.
Your textbook is going to help you know the language. Your professors will ideally help you start applying that. Because that's the main thing is we have a lot of people who are super really good at, you ask them like, hey, what is this? What is this? And they can give you definitions, but they can't really apply that. So we have this, the disconnect we see is that it's just like, man, they know what this data is, but when they're actually looking at it and analyzing it, they're unable to apply that, oh, that is the malicious process because it does have a detection on it. Rather, it's, well, I don't know what that is, and it's signed by Windows. And it's just like, well,
Yeah.
you can fake stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. I remember a hack. Oh boy, when was that? It must have been a few years ago, but they were rerouting traffic to a website, but they were doing it on a Microsoft Azure website. So it had a Microsoft certificate. And they're like, well, it's secure. It's got a valid cert. But it was still wrong, and it caused a lot of issues. I forget how that was all resolved, but yeah, that's even Microsoft signed stuff. Can't always trust it. Mm-hmm. So what's one thing you wish more people understood about cybersecurity in the university setting or in general?
It's a deep field. It's deceptively deep because, we have this idea that it's just like, okay, we defend the data and, there's a clear distinction between what it is to do that. And oftentimes not really, unfortunately, especially for, a university, we're open by nature. We're sharing our research, we're helping, society, arguably, stuff like that. There's a lot of intricacies in regards to how do you actually secure this, but still let the business function. And I know that in the textbooks, it says that a lot, and that's a very common theme is just like, hey, make sure that, you're not strangling the business. But
yeah, a balance between security and usability, right?
Exactly. But the actual way you reach that balance is usually very unique to your own experience.
Yeah.
For better and worse, you'll come into the field thinking, well, of course, we'll have a firewall that blocks, all sort of FTP inbound, and we'll disallow anonymous FTP. And it's like, well, turns out that's necessary, even though it is, arguably not the correct thing to do. So now you have to figure out how are you going to mitigate this?
Yeah. Yeah, I do a lot of outreach, and it was funny because I spoke with some sixth graders, and we had me and a few other cybersecurity professionals there, and all did different things, right? I do cybersecurity research. Another person did cybersecurity with networking, and another one was, I think, a federal contractor with cybersecurity there. So very different scales, very different focuses. And the first question, I think, for all of us from students was, what was the biggest attack you blocked? And I was like, well, I do research, so I don't actively block things, And then the network guy was like, well, there was this, bot attack, and I blocked all of it because I recognized the bot signature. And the other guy was like, well, Russia. So, it's such a wide range. And then, I asked the kids, what do you imagine with cybersecurity? And they're like, a guy in a hoodie, typing, hunched over his keyboard. And it's like, well, not necessarily. So yeah, there's all different focuses, all different fields, just everything. So speaking of that, and I think we touched a little bit of it earlier, to get into cybersecurity, you probably want to be sort of in a technical field. I would imagine having some good problem solving, curiosity. Are there other things that you would say are, students should focus on to get into the industry side like yourself?
Definitely make sure you're very comfortable with the idea of continuous learning. Technology in general changes nonstop. I think it's Moore's law that says like, hey, CPUs are constantly, doubling their power or something, right?
Yeah.
But in cybersecurity, especially, like in Europe, I think in France, they just announced that they're switching to Linux. So if you're an IT worker or a security professional, you're now having to, go from, well, I was a Windows professional for 10 years. I guess I'm now brushing up my Linux knowledge,
Red Hat. Yeah.
It's there's never 2 weeks that are going to be the same in this field, unfortunately. You'll still be able to transfer the skills from one thing to another, but you're not going to be ever working with the same thing. A new attack vector gets discovered, like right now for Microsoft, they're having a lot of fun with all these like nightmare Eclipse vulnerabilities that they keep finding.
Yeah.
Or that keep being found for them.
Yep. And I know the latest AI model,
the Mythos one?
Yeah, Mythos. Yeah, Mythos is finding a lot of 0-day attacks. Yeah. Was there ever a moment in your career where you're like, wow, this is it. This is why I do cybersecurity?
I guess a lot of those moments come after we prevent something big or we manage to, help people out, right? We've had a lot of these instances where, people are just like, I didn't even know my data was being encrypted. And it's like, if I had lost all of this or if there weren't any backups or anything, that would have been it for me. And it's just like, well, we got your back basically on that front. Also, just the sheer excitement of finally unraveling something, whether it's where did this malware come from? How did this person actually get breached? Or, even the simple, wow, we closed that before somebody could actually exploit it.
Yeah.
The wins that you get from, finally actually improving the security posture of something are great. If you don't really take satisfaction in, building a fence and then having to upgrade that fence every year, it's going to be a little bit of a rough entrance into cybersecurity.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I think in the research side of things, continuous learning, that is something that, I mean, the students want to do research on stuff that's happening right now, on the technology that's used, and the latest and greatest right now, not stuff that was done 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, whatever it is. We've done research into blockchain and IoT things and AI. And yeah, it's just continuous learning on our side as well. And I think that's one thing that for me, keeps me interested and has a big impact. Well, I think that's everything. Any closing words, Sam?
No, if you're interested in working and getting some real world experience here on campus, definitely look on Handshake for the Security Operations Center postings. We are on campus, so if you do get accepted in, you can just go to your classes, then walk over and start getting some work credit.
Yeah, I think that's an incredible opportunity. So, all right. Well, thank you so much, Sam, for coming in today. It was a pleasure. And thank you for keeping all of us safe and secure.